Hello, I hope this finds you well. It's Sakina here, and I am the founder of the Real Birth Project. And this evening, I'm going to be talking a little bit about hypnobirthing and the way we use hypnobirthing at the Real Birth Project, which is making it really practical, really non-judgmental, and just applicable to support you however birth unfolds. So that's kind of a little bit of a spoiler because actually, over the next few months, I'm going to do a live answering a lot of the FAQs that we get. And one of the main ones is hypnobirthing for natural births only or just vaginal births? So if you're going to physiological birth and you're expecting to birth vaginally. So that's something that comes up a lot. And I think it's a sort of way that many people identify hypnobirthing. I think a lot of the videos we probably see and a lot of the stories we hear mean that we place these tools and techniques particularly in line and associate them with physiological or vaginal births, as I prefer to call them. So I think all birth is natural, whether it's vaginal or abdominal. They are the only two ways that we have ever been able to birth our babies. But certainly, I think hypnobirthing often gets associated with the idea of perhaps a drug-free vaginal birth. So in answer to the question for today's live, the answer is no, it's not only for that. And actually, there's really, really good reasons why it's useful for all births. So I'm going to start by just thinking a little bit about why it is helpful for physiological birth. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about why it's useful for all birth scenarios. So in hypnobirthing, we work with the premise of the mind-body connection. And we're looking at how the thoughts we have in our mind influence what happens to us in our bodies. So for many of us who are going into birth, the ideas we've seen, heard, perhaps even experienced before may be challenging or difficult. So if you just think about what you know about birth for a moment, then you might get pictures in your head and they might be quite varied, but you might get some that create a little bit of fear or nervousness. And if you want to know more about this, I'm actually going to be doing a taster on the 4th of Feb. It's a free online taster. We'll do it via a webinar, so you can come and join that. I'll put the link in below. So if you want to explore what's going on in your mind a little bit more, please do come and join me next week for that. But when you have some of these thoughts, the ones that create fear are changing the way in which your mind is responding and your body responds. And what I mean by that is it changes the response that your mind creates in your body. So at any given time, there are only two responses that your sort of nervous system can be in, your body, your state of being can be. And one of them is the sympathetic nervous response. And you may have heard of this as the fight, flight, freeze response or the stress response. So that's one. The only other one you can be in at any given time is your parasympathetic, your rest and digest, or as I like to call it, your Friday night on the sofa with your lycras, relaxing sort of response, that feeling of letting go. Your breath is deeper, you feel your mind feels clearer, more relaxed. So that's your rest and digest. So you're only in one of these at any one time, and there are only two that you can be in. So you're in that sympathetic stress, or you're in that parasympathetic rest and digest. Now, why this matters is because when you've got thoughts in your mind, your brain's going to be thinking about which one is most appropriate to use. And if your thoughts around birth are ones that trigger fear, then it's going to choose the stress response. And so what that's going to do is pump out those hormones, those cortisols and hormones like adrenaline, which are the stress responses in the body. And what they do is they actually stop the flow of oxytocin, which many of you have probably heard of now. So if you have heard of oxytocin, you can just give me a hand up in the comments. I know it's fantastic that people are talking about it now. And that is the hormone that you want to get your uterus moving in birth. So oxytocin's really vital in a physiological birth. So if you've got stress or fear, and that gets triggered in birth, those thoughts get triggered, then your brain's going to pump out the stress response. And that's actually going to block the flow of oxytocin. So it's going to be producing hormones that block the flow of oxytocin. It's actually going to also be changing the physical nature of what's going on, because those hormones also make your body tense and ready for action. So when you think about birth physiologically, which is powerful muscles of the uterus, and I'm looking down, I don't know what, like, you know, my uterus isn't moving at the moment, but what my hands are doing is this, which is the upward movements of the uterus that happen during birth. Those movements are then trying to happen without lots of good oxytocin, which makes them powerful and really efficient. And they're also trying to happen when there's tension in the body. And when you've got tension in the muscles, and then you're trying to move those muscles, you create resistance. And if you're creating resistance in the muscles, you can have pain. And then, of course, pain is the thing that your, you know, nervous system says, uh-oh, this is really bad, and you're probably going to push out a stress response for. So you can see there becomes a bit of a cycle. So actually, thinking about what you're going into birth with for a physiological birth is really useful, because if you can release that sense of fear, and I think one of the best ways to do that is to feel informed, but also if you've got tools, then actually you're able to calm your nervous system down, get into the rest and digest, and then also be producing and allowing more oxytocin to flow. So in a physiological birth, what you're holding in your mind does impact what's going on in your body physically, but also emotionally as well, because if you're stressed, then you're actually processing the experience in a totally different way. Your brain's processing it in a totally different way. And when you think about a kind of stress response in the brain and how you might have memories from times that feel really stressful, sometimes you don't remember them all in the same way. You get snippets of it, you don't get a whole narrative, and you feel unsafe, and it doesn't necessarily feel good. So not only is it about the physical, it's also about the experience of birth. And that's something that the Real Birth Project was really about, was thinking about how you experience birth, how you feel in birth. So it's not just about how it looks. So certainly hypnobirthing is about giving you those tools, those techniques that you can relax with, that you can feel really informed and empowered knowing what's going on in a physiological birth. And it's also about knowing that you are supporting yourself with the actions you take, not just physically, but also emotionally, to create hopefully an experience that feels much more nourishing, that you feel much more centered in. So it absolutely does support a physiological birth, or you might call it, a natural birth or a vaginal birth. But actually, it's not just for that, because wherever or however your birth is unfolding, if we think about how we want hormones to be flowing through our body, whether it's birthing physiologically, so that means we're having surges or contractions, as you may be calling them. In hypnobirthing, we call them surges, because we think about the impact language has on our sort of emotions and our sense of feeling. So we call them surges. So if you think about that aspect of it, we're also thinking about what happens when you still need those hormones flowing, whether or not you're experiencing those surges, because hormones run like a symphony. They're not just there to move the uterus and for the baby to come out. They're actually, oxytocin has several uses. And if you imagine hormones to be a little bit like a symphony orchestra, they kind of play together really beautifully, but you need all the instruments, all the parts, all the hormones playing in order to really create this wonderful symphony that holds itself up, that sings, that sounds amazing. So you need certain hormones in play however you're birthing. So that sense of feeling more relaxed, getting into your rest and digest, feeling informed, feeling calm, staying out of that stress part of the brain so we can create good experiences, being able to produce oxytocin, allowing it to flow, is really useful for us no matter where we're birthing, because wherever we're birthing, we still want that oxytocin in play. We still want to be having a good experience. We still want to be able to be processing that experience and being a part of it, because oxytocin then goes on to allow other hormones to play as well. So in that symphony, you want to be getting beta endorphins, your body's natural morphine. You want to be supporting that oxytocin flow for after you meet your baby, so that you've got oxytocin, which is also a bonding hormone. It helps us bond socially to each other. And also it triggers other hormones as well, things like prolactin, which mean that you are, getting that milk let down as well. So all those things are really helpful. So you need oxytocin in play. So wherever you're birthing, and even if your birthing changes, you still want to have tools that give you that holding, that sense of security, and that sense of being able to stay very much as possible out of that stress response and into more that rest and digest. Now, I'm not saying there aren't situations in birth that don't feel stressful. But what I am suggesting is that it's really useful to have a set of tools and techniques that you can use to kind of ground your own experience of that, because you don't need to feel the full breadth of that experience around you. You can still feel at the center of it. So techniques that we use in hypnobirthing, like breathing techniques, just ground you in your body so you feel centered, because you don't want to drift into a panic. That's not a great feeling for anybody. And you want to be able to have tools that you are using wherever you are, that you can call on, so that you actually feel like you're still there and you're still really part of that experience, because you absolutely are. And the thing that I would say is, birth is the person who's birthing is at that center of that experience, and you'll go on to remember that experience for many, many years to come. So it's really, really important. I'm also going to say, if you've got any questions at this point, just drop them in the comments and I will come and I will answer them. And if you're watching this on a replay, just drop them in and I will come and answer them. So hypnobirthing is really useful for physiological births. It's really empowering, because you actually get to find out what's going on in your body. I mean, I have to say, I had a baby, and I had my first baby, and I didn't use hypnobirthing. So when I was learning hypnobirthing techniques for my second, it was total revelation, even learning about what's going on in my body, how my uterus moves. I mean, how empowering that was for me, I cannot tell you, to understand the process that my body was going on as I started to go through these physical sensations of birth. And it's quite incredible that many of us have reached a stage in our lives, having gone through, education systems, whatever, and still not know this. So actually, hypnobirthing really gives you a really nice connection to your own body, what's going on. And what we do at the Real Birth Project as well is we talk about all the different spaces in birth, including abdominal births and understanding what's going on in those, because currently about 25% of babies are born in that way here in the UK. And I know those figures vary for those of you who are watching us from other parts of the world. But a good percentage of babies are born that way. So still feeling informed and understanding how your body is birthing your baby abdominally is really, really important. And it's also, I think, really useful to know that through that physical process, you have tools and techniques that you can use that can help you feel emotionally calm, emotionally regulated, because it's that feeling that stays with us. And it has always really amazed me that it's not what birth looks like, it's actually how birth feels. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people now, and I hear birth stories, and it's incredible to hear empowering birth stories, choices that people have made because they've been informed. But then, of course, they've had the tools and techniques to be able to see themselves through that choice and to feel good about that choice and to be grounded at the center of it. And that's always wonderful. And to come out and feel like actually their voice was heard, they were feeling like they had something they could use, breathing, visualization, the techniques we use. And then actually their experience coming out of birth and into meeting their baby could feel smoother. And they were able to bond more easily. They were able to transition slightly more easily into that life with their new baby. Because all of those factors that we were talking about, those hormones being in play, that sense of being in your parasympathetic, your rest and digest as much as possible, or out of your stress response and not deeply into your stress response, really make a difference to how you transition through birth. So if you are thinking that actually you're not going to be birthing physiologically and you're thinking, is hypnobirthing for you, then I would say it's absolutely worth looking into. And how you choose to do that is entirely up to you. Perhaps you want to take a course, but if you feel that doesn't feel right, there are loads of great online courses. We've got an online course that really looks at that emotional experience alongside the physical. And there are lots of other resources out there. There's books, there's audios, there's YouTube videos. We also have a YouTube channel. Do check it out, so share tips on there. So there's lots of ways that you can still access these techniques if you're thinking that you're not planning a physiological birth, but you still want to have that sense of being able to be at the center of your experience and have tools to help you stay calm, information to make you feel confident and understand what your choices are, resources that you can call on in yourself, but also working with the people around you to make your experience feel positive, not just for you, but also for your baby. Because through all this, we have to remember that our babies are inside us. And so the experiences we have, they also have. You know, they get the hormones that we're getting through the placenta. So if we're having large amounts, very large amounts of stress hormones, our babies are also receiving that too. If our nervous system is more regulated, if we feel calmer, then we're giving our babies that sense and that experience of our bodies in pregnancy. And in hypnobirthing, we practice all our techniques, so you get the benefits of them in pregnancy. Then into birth, using them to stay as calm as we can, to hopefully even enjoy as much as we can too, and really to just feel really centered through the experience. And then of course you've got these tools for afterbirth too, and it's just trying to smooth the edges of these experiences. I think that's really important to remember. So it wasn't really a tough question to answer, but it isn't just for vaginal births. It's not just for physiological births. It is for all births, and it's all for all birth spaces, whether you're at home, whether you're traveling somewhere, you know, you might be transferring in from home to hospital. You might be moving from one hospital space to another. These tools and techniques are portable, and they just give you that holding as you transition through these different spaces, these different times in your journey, in your experience. They are really helpful, not just for the birth, but of course with pregnancy and after birth too as well. So it really is a set of tools and techniques that can be handy, useful life skills as well. And what they do is they give you a foundation by which you can stay calm, centered, and you have something that you are in control of, these tools and techniques to help you and guide you and navigate this experience with. So whilst it's really associated with natural vaginal births, I would say that is absolutely not where the magic of it lies. The magic of it lies in the fact that it is so handy for all births and supporting the underlying processes, not just what birth looks like, but what birth feels like. And it's a set of tools and techniques that can really help you navigate these changes from pregnancy to parenthood too. So I will be running tasters and things as well. So do check out our info if you want to know any more and you want to delve a little bit more deeply. And I'll also be answering some more questions over the coming weeks too. But if you've got any questions around this, then please do leave a comment, let me know, and I will come back and I'll answer that. But thank you so much for joining me this evening, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. Take care now, and I'll see you soon.